Coming up on this episode of One-on-One Sports.
Take a look at the best MLB free agents on the market.
Assess the NFL stars in the midseason hot seat.
And a special look into the first ever women's wrestling match in Saudi Arabia.
All that and so much more.
And it all starts
right now.
Welcome to this week's episode of One-on-One Sports. I'm Andrew Vandellis.
And I'm Javik Blake. We have a lot in store, but first, let's step up to the plate for the quick hitters. On Tuesday, the NBA gave Atlanta Hawks power forward John Collins a 25-game suspension for use of performance-enhancing drugs. Collins plans on appealing the suspension, saying that he was taking supplements that had an illegal substance unbeknownst to him. Andrew, what do you make of the suspension, and how does it affect the start of the Hawks season?
It's what we've seen in the NBA far too many times, that it just seems like a mental lapse on Collins' end. And that sadly has ended up more detrimental to the team and to his season. I don't know why they're not checking supplements they're taking before they're doing to see it. Maybe it's a complex process. But either way, it is embarrassing. And John Collins also has to deal with Travis Schlenk, the GM of the Hawks, calling this a disappointment. It's just a bad mistake that could cost the Hawks a good amount of games.
And it will cost the Hawks a good amount of games. John Collins, really one of the power core on this team. But one of the big things is, it's almost like we hear this excuse so many times from a ton of different players. Ryan Braun in baseball, basically every single time someone gets suspended, that's the excuse we hear, which is an interesting thing.
It's just very interesting, like, to try and find out where they're getting it too. You know, maybe it's all over the counter, maybe it's from, trainers or anything like that. There just needs to be a better vetting process, I think, when it comes in terms to, checking the supplements and the vitamins or whatever they're taking. Hopefully not steroids, but who knows. Either way, it's just a giant mental lapse, and it needs to stop soon, I think.
It definitely does. I think this is one of the big things that we've seen in sports throughout really the past 20, 25 years is
back
this
to like Roger Clemens.
Exactly.
Like
with players taking substances, they don't know what's in it. They're trusting someone who may not be the most trustworthy person to tell them what's in the substance, and it ends up getting them hurt, which is the worst part about it.
Definitely. It's just a shame for the entire organization. This week, Carolina Panthers starting quarterback Cam Newton's season comes to an end. On Tuesday, the team announced that they will be placing Newton on the IR list, giving backup quarterback Kyle Allen an even bigger opportunity to stand out. Javik, is this a smart move on the Panthers' end, and what do you think this means for the team?
I think what this means for the team, it gives Carolina the ability to rely on Christian McCaffrey, who is an MVP candidate this year. He's done fantastic. Kyle Allen also hasn't been that bad of a backup. Remember when he's been very good. When Cam Newton came out, he had a QBR this season of 22 out of 100. Not good.
Not at all.
Kyle Allen's been a good replacement. 9 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, a 44 QBR, double what Cam Newton had. But Christian McCaffrey is leading this team. 9 touchdowns since October the 1st. He's leading this team. He's become an MVP candidate. More over anything else, they can rely on their running game, which is the strength of this team.
I was going to say, I don't want to pretend like Kyle Allen's the big reason why Carolina is winning games. That is Christian McCaffrey, obviously. But as you mentioned, 9 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 5-1 as a starter as well. And a 60% completion percentage, which proves that he's actually, making the effort to get better and, actually stepping up. Because, a lot of backups we've seen in this league, whether, it's Ryan Finley for the Bengals this week, stepping up for Andy Dalton, or anybody like Dwayne Haskins, for example. They just crush under pressure. And I think a big part of Allen's success is that, and we'll get to Cam Newton in a second, is that he has such a good support base as well. But here's my follow-up for you. Could this be the last season we see Cam Newton in a Panthers uniform in?
I don't want to go too far and say he's absolutely gone. And you have to remember, they've won 4 of 5, but the teams they've played, if you take out San Francisco being 8-0, 19-24-1 is the combined record. He hasn't played against a lot of great talent. But the way this team runs with Christian McCaffrey taking the load, and really they become a running team, which is what this team is. Cam Newton is not the same quarterback he was when he first came out of college. He's slower. He's not as good as you would want him to be if you're a Carolina Panther fan. So Christian McCaffrey really is able to step up and get the spotlight, which I think this team needs. And depending on if they do down the stretch, if they make the playoffs, there's no way we see Cam Newton back. I think Kyle Allen really solidifies his role as the guy in Carolina.
Really? Okay. I was going to say, I think maybe they're just trying to get Cam back to 100%. Who knows? And maybe the safe bet on that is, going, to the IR. But I think for now we shouldn't assume. I kind of agree with you, though. If they get to the playoffs, they're doing a hot start. This is a running team now. But I think this is something we'll have to see, wait and see how Allen holds up in the long run. I know we hate saying we wait and see here, but truly, that's all we got to do.
I think we just got to wait and see. From North Carolina to Indianapolis.
Sorry, Alex Harris.
For Indianapolis Colts kicker Adam Vinatieri, he's been struggling all season long. His woes continued for the veteran, going 1 of 2 on field goal attempts on Sunday against the Colts. And Vinatieri currently has just a 70% field goal percentage on the season, a career low for what is the top kicker in NFL history. Andrew, how should the Colts handle Vinatieri's slump? And is it time for them to move on from the 23-year-old veteran?
I'll take the fall for your little slip up there. It was against the Steelers. That was my bad writing. But either way, 70% completion. Sheesh. I mean, prior to this year, for extra points, he had only missed 18 throughout his entire career. This season, already missed 5. And he's 12 for 17 on the year, and I don't think this is something to put him out for pasture just yet. I wouldn't be surprised if he retires after this year or if the Colts cut him. This only kind of hurts his legacy, though. You know, it's really sad. It's like watching a pet grow older, you know, your childhood pet. You can't help but feel sorry for them. They just can't do it they used to. It might be, you know, time for a little old Yeller if the Colts, you know, can't pick it back up, if he can't pick it up. But I don't think they should cut him this season.
I don't think they should cut him this season either. And the big thing here is we saw this with Peyton Manning in Denver at the later parts of his career. He wasn't the Peyton Manning we saw with the Colts, especially in his heyday. But ride him out. Let him ride it out until the end. Don't let him get cut, have to retire in the middle of the season. He's the greatest kicker in NFL history. You have to let him at least finish out this season, and then he can ride off into the sunset. Give him a little retirement parade, and then let him go. You can't cut him now, even though he has been one of the worst kickers in the league.
Yeah, but and another thing of that is tenure. And, you know, it's a respect thing as well. And as much as we want to go on and say, like, oh, you know, sometimes you just got to do what needs to be done, Adam Vinatieri's been a part of the Colts for a long time, almost as long, if not longer, than he was on the Patriots as well. And it's just doing respect to a veteran. Maybe you can hire a second kicker and maybe have him split reps, you know, for longer field goals or shorter, depending on what he's struggling with more. But I think this is something that, you know, it's a respect thing between the Colts and Vinatieri and the Ursays that they'll just let him ride it out.
Exactly. And the one way I would see him getting released is if they make the playoffs. You can't have him kicking in the playoffs.
No.
The way he's been this season, you can't have him kicking in the playoffs. That's really the only way I could see him getting released.
Either way, nothing but respect for the GOAT. Today, the Washington Redskins placed tackle Trent Williams on non-football IR, meaning that his season is over and the team does not have to pay him his remaining $6 million salary. Javik, with all the controversy surrounding Williams and the Redskins, and we'll get into that, what do you make of all this? And do you think the Redskins will pay Williams?
Well, the question is he getting paid in a lawsuit or are they actually paying his salary?
That is a good question right there.
Because that's the biggest question, right? This entire story, no matter what side you look on, it is crazy. He asked the NFLPA to back off after he basically blamed the Washington Redskins trading cap for not diagnosing a tumor as a tumor, which led to him having cancer, which, first off, doesn't make any sense why I would tell the NFLPA to back off. Also, if it's true, severe implications for not only the Redskins, but the NFL as a whole.
I mean, it's malpractice and negligence at its best, and I'm totally on Williams' side. I understand why he doesn't want the Players Association involved. He might just want to do it independently, might not have to deal with the extra baggage that comes along with it. This shows that the Redskins are just incompetent. They botch Haskins in favor of Case Keenum. They ruined the latter part of Adrian Peterson's career, and now they can't even take proper care of their talent. It's ridiculous.
And they ruined RG3's career when they sent him back out with a knee injury in the NFC Division.
I don't know what is going through their heads, and you know, it's a shame on them if the story lines up on Williams' part for not taking care of their talent, and what he noted as well, coming back and reporting for the team, which he shouldn't have, but like, you know, he wanted to get his money. A big part of his hesitancy to come back was due to the lack of trust for their medical staff. And it was a cancerous growth in his skull that wasn't treated for 5 years because the team classified it as a minor thing.
It's just unbelievable. But also, this isn't the first time we've seen the NFL fail to protect its players. The NFL, if you want to look at a league that couldn't do a worse job of protecting their players, it's the NFL. We saw the concussion lawsuit a few years ago, and that had a massive payday for players. We could be seeing the same exact thing for Trent Williams, with just the fact that the Redskins couldn't handle this any worse. You have a man who possibly has a tumorous cancer, and you do nothing for half a decade?
Nothing.
Nothing.
I think they're not going to pay him either, but, you know, I think the best thing for Williams to do is ask for his release and cut his losses, if you ask me.
And they'll see the Redskins in court.
Well, that's all the time we have for the quick hitters.
But don't go away. We'll be right back with more on this episode of One-on-One Sports.
With the weather getting colder, that can only mean one thing in the NFL. The seats are starting to warm up. Here with Cole Noble to take a look at some players, coaches, and GM's job securities with less than half the season remaining. So, Cole, let's start off with the player. Which player is on the hot seat?
The player on the hot seat, and actually it's on fire, is Andy Dalton in Cincinnati.
Just like his hair.
Yeah, just like his hair, exactly. He's already out of his job. Ryan Finley's in off the bench. As a rookie, Andy Dalton went 0-8, 9 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. I mean, come on.
That's pretty much as even as you can get, but who the heck is Ryan Finley, and why should the Bengals trust him over Dalton?
Well, that's just what it says about Andy Dalton, is that they're going to favor, second or third round rookie over Andy Dalton. And then Andy Dalton right now, next year, is on pace to hit the cap at $17.7 million. If you're paying that to your backup quarterback, I mean, come on.
So my question now is, do you think with the Dolphins out of the equation, Bengals the only defeated team left, being that they lose to the Ravens this week, do you think they go for Tua?
Either Tua Tagovailoa or Joe Burrow. I think like the bomb for Burrow is kind of the real thing right now, along with the tank for Tua. It's obviously going to be one of those two guys. And Cincinnati, if they have that first pick, which they do right now, they'll be taking one of those two guys.
All right, so let's move from players to coaches. Which coach do you think is on the hot seat?
I have Adam Gase for the New York Jets. I mean, after that loss to Miami, a team that's trying to lose. How do you lose to that team? And then I don't even know how he got the job, because you go back to when he was the coach with Miami. He was 23-25 with Miami. And you know who his quarterback was? Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah.
Right now, without Adam Gase, Tannehill's leading the league in completion percentage.
Yeah, and he went to a completely new team in the Titans as well. So for Gase, he's also the GM, isn't he?
Yes, he is.
So do you think he'd be ousted from both positions? Do you think they'd retain him as the GM? You know, anything like that?
Well, if he's not going to be the head coach, there's no way he can be a general manager. And right now, the way I see it, he can't even be a head coach in this league. The way that Sam Darnold and Le'Veon Bell have been playing this year, they might end up having one of their worst statistical seasons they've ever had.
Just a blemish.
Sam Darnold is third in the league in interceptions. He's played 5 games.
He also sees ghosts as well. So we're going to move on to general managers. Which general manager is on your hot seat?
I have Thomas Dimitroff, and you may not know of him, but he's the general manager of the Atlanta Falcons.
Gotcha.
You think back to the Super Bowl days, 3 years ago for the Falcons. After that year, they let Kyle Shanahan leave. They bring in Steve Sarkisian as their offensive coordinator. The last 2 years, he's out, and now they have Dirk Cutter in from Tampa Bay as their new offensive coordinator, and they still aren't getting the ball to Julio Jones.
I was going to say, you think you go from Tampa Bay to Atlanta with Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, at the time Mohamed Sanu as well.
Yeah.
What went wrong there? What do you think is the problem?
I think it's the GM. He's not doing what needs to be done on offense, and then especially on defense. Their defense is their biggest problem, and again this year we see that. They're ranked 28th in the league. And then at the trade deadline, they made no moves to acquire stars on defense. They kept aging stars that they needed to get rid of, like Vic Beasley and Desmond Trufant. They kept those guys on their roster, and then they traded away Mohamed Sanu, one of their most productive guys on offense. So it's not making sense. And along with their offensive coordinator problems, Dan Quinn should have been gone at least last year, and he needs to go this year. And if Dan Quinn's not gone, then they need to start looking at their general manager.
I agree. Real quick, if you were the GM of the Falcons, say he gets fired, what's your first move?
You need to get more players on offense, of course, but especially they need another number 3 receiver.
Yeah.
I don't really agree with getting rid of Mohamed Sanu, but looking at it right now, you need a new head coach, you need a new offensive coordinator, and you need new players on defense.
You keep Matt Ryan, though, either way. He's your franchise guy.
You keep Matt Ryan 100%.
Then all things are right in the world, and maybe they're content for a Super Bowl again. Well, that's all the time we have from the Gridiron, but be sure to follow us on all social media platforms at One-on-One Sports, and let us know which NFL stars you think are on the hot seat.
We've now gone 2 weeks without baseball, and to say our baseball analysts in the show don't exactly know what to do with themselves, well, that'd be selling it short. I'm Javik Blake, joined at the desk by Carson Blythe to look ahead as what is sure to be a wild 2019 offseason. There are plenty of free agents left on the market, and one of the biggest names is Garrett Cole, but who's the top free agent not named Garrett Cole in the market?
Well, I have to say, he needs no introduction. Steven Strasburg. You know him, I know him. We both watched the World Series. He's an animal. Coming off a big postseason, he's had big postseasons before that. The Nationals just didn't show up with him. I think he's going to be a really, 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 really good talent for any team to pick up, arguably a 1B to Garrett Cole's 1A. He's so good, and his catchers weren't even good for him last year. He produces whenever he's healthy, and if he can get a good team with a good medical staff, I think he could be really big for him.
And you were just saying it a little bit ago that you were thinking the Padres would get him, and that'd be a great combination. Him and Austin Hedges together. Austin Hedges, one of the best defensive catchers in the game. He could help elevate him to a whole new level.
Oh, he can have a coming out party with Steven Strasburg. Because right now they're pitching, they have Chris Paddock, who's really good, but a lot of their starters are a little here nor there. If they show up a big time ace like Steven Strasburg, and he can accentuate that ace to being next level, he'll get a lot of money and a whole lot of praise.
He definitely will. And another question here, middle of the road team that can make a big splash. We saw that last year with the Padres. Who is this offseason's Padres?
Well, if you're talking about the Padres, I'm going to talk about something even bolder, the Toronto Blue Jays. They have a lot of young talent. Lourdes Gurriel Jr., Bo Bichette, Vlad Guerrero Jr., Calvin Biggio.
Exactly.
They're all fantastic young talents. Some of them didn't produce quite to the level I believe they can produce to, but they're all one day going to be stars, and nothing's better than with the star, a bunch of young stars, than a veteran talent who can really teach them how to play in the league and teach them how to play well. Think Carlos Beltran in the Astros, and think James Shields of the Royals.
So who do you think they can go out and get?
Well, honestly, I'm thinking they might go out and get some starting pitching, maybe some middle-of-the-road starters like J.A. Happ.
That'd very much be interesting, but now what's your boldest free agent prediction as we head into the offseason?
Well, I'm going to go a little crazy. I'm thinking Anthony Rendon to the Los Angeles Dodgers. And I think he's going to get $45 million a year. And here's why.
$45 million a year for Anthony Rendon?
Yes, I am saying this. Why am I saying this? Because he's coming off the best season of his career, where he had over a 1,000 OPS and kept up Mike Trout with a lot of his stats. He showed up really well. He's going to get a similar deal he's going to a team that has a lot of money. And they offered Bryce Harper that much last year. And he's shown up way more than Bryce Harper ever did.
So you're saying right now Anthony Rendon will be a better player for the next 5 years than Bryce Harper?
I firmly believe that.
Why?
I believe that because he's produced. Bryce Harper has had one really, really, really good season and one injury-cut season. Besides for that, he's been a mess of strikeouts and a mess of non-production. And his defense is nowhere near as good as Anthony Rendon's. Anthony Rendon holds it down in the hot corner, and he's won a World Series.
Well, we'll certainly see. There are plenty of free agents left in the market, but that's all the time we have from the Diamond. Be sure to let us know what you think in the comments below. We'll be right back. The 2019 Major League Soccer season's coming to a close on Sunday as the Seattle Sounders host Toronto FC in the MLS Cup Final. I'm here with Will Tunis to give you a preview of what to expect when both teams take the field this weekend. Will, first question out of the gate, what can we expect from both teams in a rematch of the 2016 and 2017 MLS Cup Finals? Let's start with Seattle Sounders.
And on the Seattle side, I think their game is going to be all about controlling the pace. Through the midfield, Christian Roldan, Jordan Morris, and Nicholas Lodero, they are very solid in that midfield, especially that defensive midfielder, Christian Roldan, who can connect the ball from the defense to the midfield to the attack. As well as if Toronto happened to get forward a little bit, they're very dangerous on the counterattack through Jordan Morris and Javen Jones. However, on the Toronto side of things, I do think they will start the game a bit slower than Seattle. You know, kind of sit back a little bit, absorb the pressure. I think if they can go into halftime with a 0-0 scoreline, I think that's a very ideal situation for them. And as the game goes on, you know, transfer from that 4-5-1, 5 in midfield to pushing the wingers up to more of a 4-3-3. I think on the counterattack, they can be even more dangerous if Seattle Sounders in the second half are pushing forward to look for a goal.
And a big thing here is both teams coming off big upsets. Seattle beating the best team in MLS history in LAFC. Yes. And for Toronto, they beat Atlanta, who's historically been one of the best two-year spans in really MLS history as well.
Yeah, Atlanta have been absolutely fantastic since you know, they came into the league. Josef Martinez up top has been out of this world. And LAFC just had Carlos Vela has scored, I believe, 38 goals this season. Mm-hmm. Most in MLS history, which is absurd, averaging more than 1 goal a game, which is unheard of in any soccer league, much less the MLS.
But back to the match itself, what's the biggest question mark coming into this game?
I think the biggest question mark is the Toronto FC striker, Josie Altidore. He's missed the whole playoffs with a quad injury right now. The coach, Greg Vanny, said he is optimistic that he will return and to be fully fit. Josie Altidore himself said it would take a little bit of a miracle. So, I mean, I doubt the Sounders know what to expect. I don't know what to expect. But even if he can come on in the second half, maybe 70 minutes, give him 20 minutes, possibly extra time if it comes to that. He is a goal scorer, goal scorer, goal scorer.
So who's hoisting MLS Cup at the end of 90 minutes?
It's got to be Seattle Sounders for me. I think they're going to get it by a 2-0 victory, winning the second win against Toronto FC in the past 3 times they've came up against each other. 2-0 win in front of their home crowd. Goals from Nicholas Lodero and Jordan Morris.
Well, that's a big prediction, and that's our experts' preview of the MLS Cup Final. Let us know what you think by giving us a shout-out on Facebook.com/101sports. We'll be right back.
Last Thursday, WWE put on their annual Crown Jewel pay-per-view in Saudi Arabia. For the past 2 years, WWE have run 2 shows a year in the kingdom and have faced criticism over their business tactics, with some even going as far to say that they're taking blood money from the nation and their government. However, this pay-per-view stood out from the rest of the Saudi shows. And not because of boxing heavyweight champion Tyson Fury stepping into the ring for the first time, or former UFC star Cain Velasquez taking on Brock Lesnar in a dream match. No. Last Thursday marked the first time ever that Saudi Arabia featured a women's wrestling match. Superstars Natalya and Lacey Evans squared off in the middle of the ring for over 50,000 in attendance, with many young women and young children in the audience. This goes far beyond the match itself, though. It is really a testament to who WWE put in that spot, and more importantly, how this match affected those in the crowd who may not have as many rights as the performers in the ring do. First off, WWE trusted themselves to put Natalya Neidhart in the spot. Someone who's no stranger to the wrestling business, being the daughter of the late legend Jim the Anvil Neidhart, along with being a multi-time WWE Women's Champion herself. To me, this was a seal of approval that Natalya was, is, and always will be one of the best and consistent women's wrestlers on the WWE roster, and that she's a workhorse for the company. The fact that they trusted her to go out there with Lacey Evans, who debuted on the roster just this year, and put on a match that nobody in the crowd had seen with their own eyes, really is a testament to how much WWE trusts both Natalya and Evans, respectively. Now, on to the more in-depth meaning behind this match. We could debate for hours on end the ethics and the morality behind WWE doing a multi-show-a-year deal with Saudi Arabia that frankly lasts throughout 2027, and the social implications around it for that matter. But WWE is a business, first and foremost, and they feel that this is what's best for them to carry through with this deal. I may not agree with it myself, but what I do agree with was pushing for a women's wrestling match to be featured at such a spotlighted event for the country. After you watch this video, go on YouTube or do a Google search of this match and watch until the very end. At the end, Natalya and Lacey Evans embrace, breaking character to signify to themselves and the world that they did it. For the first time ever, 2 women were wrestling in a nation where women do not have those many basic rights as you, me, or anyone in the majority of our country do, let alone the entire world. Then look at the crowd. The women in hijab or traditional attire, the little girls cheering on the 2 performers, crying in the audience, and the genuine excitement that they feel, and the hope that someday they might just get the opportunity to live out their dreams themselves. If this is anything, it's a beacon of hope for the WWE and for women around the world. No Saudi Arabian social laws are far being fixed because of this. But the effect that this match will have on the wrestling world, and perhaps outside of the world of the WWE bubble, is unprecedented. This is a landmark for progress, and while there's much work to do, the impact this has made on the women and children in the audience was unbelievable. Wrestling may be predetermined, scripted, even the dreaded F word us wrestling fans like to hear, fake. The one thing that was real was that this empowered women in a nation where women needed empowerment, equal rights, and a sign of hope. Miami Dolphins picked up their first win against the New York Jets on Sunday, perhaps marking the beginning of the end for one of sports' modern-day tanking efforts, the fish tank. Javid, we've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly in terms of tanking, but what is the best or worst tank in sports?
First, let's pay our respects to the fish tank. It lasted well. They went long, but then they lost to the Jets.
Our favorite.
Which is 2 teams that are tanking terribly. But either way, best tank in history. You got to go with the Houston Astros. I mean, 2 World Series in the last 3 years, 3 straight ALCS appearances, when just 7 years ago, they lost 111 games, their 3rd straight season losing 105 plus. The new school Moneyball team, Jeff Lunho, their GM, has done a fantastic job using analytics to just take this team to another level. We saw it with Garrett Cole. The way their pitching staff is centered around spin rate, creating those spin rates for fastballs to make them look a little faster, make the curve a little bit more. They've worked fantastic for them. And they're able to create a core from those 3 years of just bad baseball.
Yeah, you know.
Of Alex Bregman, Carlos Correa, and Jose Altuve, which are going to carry this team for the next 5-10 years.
Absolutely. So you talked about the best. I'm going to talk about the worst. Let's call a spade here. 2017 Cleveland Browns.
And this is the part where we laugh.
I wrote no notes needed. I hope you mark that down. Because you go out and you go 0-16. And the previous year you're 1-15. When you're clearly trying to tank more. And you get Baker Mayfield, okay, good start. You fire Hugh Jackson, okay, good start. Oh, now you have Odell Beckham Jr., you have, Nick Chubb, whatever. All right, great. And then you just crap your pants this season. How do you do that? Bad coaching. Freddie Kitchens might just not be all that he's cracked up to be, since last season when he took over. Maybe it's, chemistry problems between Baker and Odell. Odell's only caught, one touchdown pass this year? It's ridiculous.
Well, Baker's only thrown 7.
It's just a bad combination of, buying too much stock in your draft and not really analyzing how it's going to impact your team, not realizing how it's going to impact your division, who they're going to come after. And at this point, the Browns are just a giant disappointment all over again.
They are. They're a giant disappointment. And moreover anything else, they haven't played well, and they're the most undisciplined football team I've seen in my entire life.
That is the biggest point, and I didn't know how to phrase it, but the most undisciplined football team. You look out there, and you realize they're running the same 4 plays.
And they fumbled on 3 straight plays. They fumbled
and they're not
against the
even
Patriots.
running them well. So I'm glad we got through the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Well, that's all the time we have here on One-on-One Sports.
If you like what you saw and you want to see more, be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, so much more, at One-on-One Sports, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more weekly sports news and content.
A special thanks to our talent, crew, and you, the viewer, for tuning in.
Well, that's all from us here at the Chris Edwards desk.
So until next time,
Whose side are you on?